starts now.
Remakes are being made more than original films these days, it seems. And while it's easy to criticize this momentum as lacking originality or creativity, there are some great stories that were given a cinematic treatment at one time, and because of advances in technology or our general understanding of things, could be made even more interesting. Here's a small sample of films that deserve a consideration. Whether these could be updated, and reworked for streaming, classic television, or full-on cinematic treatment, we could get some great content from these titles. Fantastic Voyage. The story is compelling. A world-renowned scientist must be saved to preserve a peaceful world order, and to do so entails the miniaturization of a medical crew and submarine that are injected into the bloodstream of the patient. The journey takes the crew and viewer through the human body. The premise is totally cool and was penned by Isaac Asimov. The film was released in 1966 and starred Raquel Welch and Donald Pleasance, among others. The effects were actually quite good. Many scenes still hold up today, but the advances since then are too attractive to not use in this context. This film has a Cold War setting and is also blatantly sexist in its development of certain characters. Having a woman on board a mission was simply unheard of, but this content is what the film is about. I'd leave it in that era because the technological know-how juxtaposed against antiquated social attitudes is even more captivating in the storyline. So Fantastic Voyage is my number one. Soylent Green. Charlton Heston is the driving force in this one. From 1973, this one is easy to fit into today's world. Over-controlling corporations, world hunger, overpopulation, food rations, and a recycling plant that uses the corpses from a euthanasia center to make a food substitute. The original lacked a visual quality, but certainly had the story and Chuck Heston, not to mention Edward G. Robinson. Moody and filled with conspiracy theories, Soylent Green remade could be a cinematic classic. The $6 Million Man. This was 1970s classic TV sci-fi action. The story focuses on an astronaut who barely survives a crash, who is then rebuilt to be better, faster, and stronger. Steve Austin, the astronaut, would be the world's first cybernetic human, and took viewers weekly into mysterious plots involving government agencies, scientists, and covert operations. The biggest obstacle is the brand. $6 million ain't gonna get you a hell of a lot anymore. But I think some of that could be worked into a new storyline. I think it's doable, and if a remake focused on the human challenges, driven by the right casting choices, it has real potential. Howard the Duck. A George Lucas product released in 1986, this one bombed. Okay, the Netflixes of the world have helped foster somewhat of a cult-like following for this. The comic has also helped drive a certain fan base. I like Howard the Duck, and not just because I happen to know the local actor who portrayed the physical character of the duck. I think the story of a mirror world with ducks as the evolved dominant species is fun to play with. George Lucas is no slouch, and he also saw the fun potential of the story. The original has its moments, and the cast certainly ain't bad to boot. But here I think today's technology would give the film what it sadly lacked 35 years ago. Furthermore, some products of the 80s resonate quite well through the years. Others, well, they just look and sound too 1980s. Come on, industry film types, give the duck another go. Zardoz. From 1974, starring the recently passed Sean Connery and a rather young Charlotte Rampling, this was weird. Weird and weird. So much that it becomes difficult to look away. It's almost as though the entire crew was stoned while making this one. Set in Ireland 200 years from now, and oddly looking like Ireland today, this movie comes complete with immortals, nudity, an alternate reality called the Vortex, the Brutals, of which Connery is a member, and a floating head, the head of Zardoz. This film still leaves the viewer asking, are these guys serious? The presentation verges on campiness at times, but if this were reworked, paying homage to the original in some way, I think there's a glimpse of potential here. Maybe a mini-series for streaming, who knows? Today's technology would certainly give the visuals a different quality, but this one, like Howard the Duck, leaves you asking, do we have fun and give it more camp, or apply a serious demeanor to it? Of all the films I've discussed in this episode, Zardoz is the must-see if you haven't seen it. I'm still shrugging my shoulders and shaking my head. And there you have it. 5 older and underrated bits of cinematic history that could be given renewed life and a totally different treatment. Visit stephenchristiansen.ca for more episodes. This podcast is available on all premium streaming platforms including Anchor, Amazon, Spotify, TuneIn, and Stitcher. I'm Stephen Christiansen. Thanks for listening.
Production of Stephen Christensen. Podcast complete.